The engine woke me before Marianne did. I want to be clear about that, because in the months since, I've heard the story told back to me a few different ways. And in most of them, she shakes me awake and tells me the world is ending. That isn't what happened. What happened is that I surfaced out of sleep the way you do when a familiar sound is coming from the wrong place, the way you'd wake if your refrigerator started running in your bedroom. It was the RV, our old Class C, the 26-footer we'd bought 9 years earlier for trips we mostly didn't take, was idling in the driveway. I knew that engine. I'd complained about that engine. It has a particular rough patch in the first minute of a cold start, a little cough around 800 RPM, and it was coughing now. My first thought was that something was wrong with it mechanically, that some relay had stuck and the thing had started itself, which is not a thing that happens. But it was 5-something in the morning, and my brain wasn't offering better theories. The room was still dark. The window over Marianne's side of the bed held that flat gray you get before the sun is anywhere near the horizon. Her side was empty. The blanket was folded back, not thrown. I got up, went to the window, and moved the curtain. She was already out there. Dressed real clothes, jeans and her canvas jacket and actual shoes, not the slippers she wore to get the paper. The RV's side door was open and the interior lights were on, that yellow galley glow. And she was walking a plastic tote from the garage, across the driveway, and lifting it up and through the door. She did it the way you carry something you've carried before, no wasted motion. I opened the window. "Marianne." She looked up. She didn't jump. "You're awake. Good. Get dressed." "What are you doing? What time is it?" "A little after 5. She set the tote inside and turned back toward the garage. "Get dressed, Russ. Warm layer. We're leaving in 10 minutes. I stood there a second with the cool air coming in. "Leaving for where?" She stopped and I could see her decide how much to say. "Route 1's already gone," she said. "So we're taking 2. But we need to be past the Delano interchange before the rest of the county figures out the same thing, and they're going to figure it out fast." I didn't know what Route 1 was. I want to be honest about that too. I had no idea what she meant. It landed in my ear like she'd said a name I was supposed to recognize and didn't. And there's a specific small humiliation in that, being spoken to like you're already part of a conversation you've never heard. "Route 1, I said. "Get dressed," she said again, gently, and went into the garage. I turned on the bedside lamp and it didn't come on. I tried the overhead switch by the door. Nothing. The house was dark, I realized then. Not just dark because it was early dark, because the power was out. The little green clock on my dresser, the one that had blinked 12 for a decade, wasn't even blinking. I got my clothes on by feel in the gray from the window, and I found my phone. 12%. No bars. Then 1 bar. Then none. There was a banner across the top from some time in the night. An emergency alert. The kind we all get for flash floods and amber alerts. This one said, "Shelter in place," and under it a second one, later, that just said, "Avoid Interstate 47, all lanes." That was all. No detail. The kind of thing that tells you something is wrong and nothing about what. I went out to the driveway. On the little dinette table inside the RV, under the galley light, there was a road atlas. Not a phone, not a printout. A spiral-bound state atlas. The kind gas stations used to sell, soft at the corners from handling. It was open, and it was open to our county. And there were lines on it. 3 of them, drawn in pen over the years by the look of it, because they weren't all the same ink. One was black and confident. One was blue. One was a fainter black. gone over twice in places like she'd argued with herself about it. Each had a small notation in her handwriting at the start. R1, R2, R3. I was still looking at it when she came up the step behind me with the last tote. "You've had these," I said. "For a while." "How long is a while?" She slid the tote onto the bench seat and latched it. "Buckle up. I'll tell you on the road. We really do have to go." She drove. I didn't argue about that, partly because she was already in the seat with her hand on the shifter, and partly because in 9 years of owning that thing, I'd learned she was better in it than I was. It's a nose-heavy vehicle, and it wanders, and she read it the way she read everything with wheels. We pulled out of the neighborhood into a morning that looked almost normal and wasn't. That's the part I keep coming back to. There were lights on in a few houses, people who had generators, or people whose power had come back. I never found out. The streetlights were dark. A dog was barking somewhere with real commitment. And there was traffic already at 5:20 in the morning on a residential collector road where you'd normally see one newspaper delivery guy. Not a lot, just wrong. Cars moving with a hurry that didn't match the hour. "Talk to me," I said. "What happened overnight?" "I don't fully know." She had the radio on, low, an AM station scanning between a man's voice and static. "Started yesterday evening in the city, from what I can piece together. Something's making people violent. Sick and violent. It moves between people, fast, and the hospitals are past capacity, and the interstate's a parking lot because everybody in 3 counties tried to leave at once around midnight." She glanced at me. "The last part I'm sure about, because that's the part that's my job." The radio man came back into range. "Are asking residents to remain indoors and to keep roadways clear for emergency." And then he was gone again, into the hiss. "That's what Route 1 is," I said. "Route 1 is the fast way. 47 to the Steuben Spur, over the top of the county. 40 minutes to my sister's, if nothing's wrong." She took a corner, and the coffee in the cup holder leaned. "But everybody's Route 1 is 47. So the second something goes wrong for everybody at once. Route 1 is the worst possible road you can be on, because you'll be sitting on it with 10,000 other people, while the thing they're all running from catches up to the back of the line. You don't know that's happening." "No," she agreed. "I know the on-ramp at Delano was solid at 440 because I could hear it on the scanner before it died. And I know 47's got no shoulder for 2 miles past the river bridge. And I know what a full interstate does when there's no shoulder and people start panicking. I don't need to see it. I've seen it. We evacuated half the district onto 47 during the ice storm, remember? 9 years ago?" I did remember, vaguely. I remembered her coming home 3 days running, looking gray. And I remembered thinking it would pass. It had passed. It had also, apparently, not passed at all. It had gone into her and become these 3 lines in a book. I made her turn off toward Route 1 anyway. I need to own that. About 20 minutes in, with the sky going from gray to a dirty pink, I asked her to take us up onto the Ridgeview overpass, which crosses 47 about a mile short of the Delano interchange. Not down onto the interstate, just up over it, so I could look. She didn't want to. I could see her weighing the minutes. 2 minutes, I said. I want to see it. If it's moving, we take Route 1 and save an hour. If it's not, I'll never argue about the Atlas again. You'll argue about the Atlas again, she said, but she took the overpass. I've spent 30 years looking down at things gone wrong. Parking structures after a flood, warehouse roofs after hail. There's a way a scene tells you its whole story in about 4 seconds, if you know how to read it. And 47 told me its story before we'd even stopped on the crown of the overpass. It wasn't moving. That was the first thing, and it wasn't the important thing. Traffic jams aren't news. The important thing was the shoulder. Cars were up on the shoulder, both directions, nose to tail, which means the shoulder had already been used up as a lane, which means the main line had been stopped long enough for people to give up and try the shoulder and then get stuck there too. And past the interchange, at the far edge of what I could see in the growing light, some of the cars weren't in lanes anymore. They were at angles. Doors open. One had its four-ways going. Nobody was in the ones I could see. People leave their cars for two reasons. Either they think they can walk to something better, or they can't stand to sit still while something bad comes. Either way, when the doors start opening, the road's not a road anymore. "Okay," I said. Marianne didn't say anything. She just put us in gear and rolled us down off the far side of the overpass. And she took a right at the bottom that I would not have thought to take, onto a county road with a number and no name. And just like that, we were off Route 1 and onto Route 2. And I understood that I'd spent my 2 minutes buying myself the certainty she'd already had for free. "How long have you had these?" I said again, when we were a few miles into it and my heart had come back down. She was quiet for a while. "I showed you the first one about 8 years ago," she said. "You were at the kitchen table doing the taxes. I brought the atlas over and showed you the way I'd figured out to get to Beth's if 47 was ever closed. And you looked at it, and you said that you weren't unkind about it. You said, 'We'll figure it out if it happens. The county's got emergency plans.'" She checked her mirror. "And the thing is, Russ, I write part of the county's emergency plans. I know exactly how good they are." I didn't have anything to say to that. "So I kept updating them," she went on. "But I stopped bringing them to the kitchen table. It wasn't a grudge. There's only so many times you show someone a thing and get told it's fine before you decide to just do the thing quietly and let the argument go. You could have told me you were still doing it." "I could have," she said. "That's fair." She let a beat go by. "And you could have decided I wasn't worrying for fun." That sat in the cab with us for a while. I want to say I had a good answer. I didn't. What I had was the beginning of an uncomfortable feeling, which was that "we'll figure it out if it happens" is a fine thing to say when the person saying it plans to be the one figuring it out. And I had never once in 8 years done a single thing to figure it out. I had outsourced the whole category to my wife, and then been faintly amused by her for accepting the job. Route 2 was where the RV started to feel less like a thing we owned, and more like something keeping us alive. We were on real rural roads now, the kind that go straight for 2 miles and then jog for no reason anyone alive remembers. The sun was up, and whatever was happening in the city and on 47 felt, out here, almost theoretical. We passed a farm with the sprinklers going on a hayfield like it was any July morning. We passed a woman in a bathrobe standing at the end of her driveway looking at her phone. She looked up at us as we went by, and I couldn't read her face. The RV, in this environment, was a small miracle, and I started to see why Marianne had kept it fed and oiled all these years for trips we never took. We had water the fresh tank was 3/4, she told me, because she'd topped it 2 days ago out of habit. We had food in the little cabinets, canned chili and crackers, and a bag of coffee, and the shelf stable stuff you buy for camping and rotate out. We had the bed in the back, made up. We had a first aid kit and a flashlight in the door pocket, and my own work bag behind the passenger seat, with my gloves and my vest and my tape and my good light. We were not a fortress. We had maybe 4 or 5 days of careful living inside a box on wheels. and out on those empty roads that felt like wealth. Marianne handed me the atlas around 8. "Navigate," she said. "I don't want to keep taking my eyes off the road. Route 2's the blue line. It gets thin around the Sable Creek crossing, but there's a way through I've done in a bus." So I navigated, and she drove, and for a while we were good at it. She'd say, "There should be a T coming up. We go left." And there would be, and we'd go left. Once she said, "This one floods, look at the ditch." And the ditch was full, standing brown water right up to the grass. And the road across the low spot had a skin of grit and silt on it where water had been over it in the night. And she took us across it slow and steady in the center where the crown was highest, and I thought, she knows this. She knows this the way I know a cracked footing when I see one. It's not magic. It's just years. I said as much. "You've driven every one of these?" "Most of them, not in this." She patted the wheel. "In a bus, you sit up high and you've got a spotter and a radio. This handle's worse than a bus, honestly. Longer overhang in the back. It'll drag if I take a dip wrong." That was the first time I heard it, the note underneath. Not fear, just a professional flagging a limitation out loud, the way I'd flag a soft spot in a floor before I walked on it. I filed it and didn't think about it. I should have thought about it. We saw our first one around 8:30. I almost didn't understand what I was looking at. There was a gas station at a crossroads, closed, pumps dark, and a man in the lot. He was moving wrong. That's the only way I know to say it. He wasn't running, and he wasn't walking. He was going towards something at the edge of the lot with a kind of lurching, all-in commitment. No arms swinging, head forward. And when we came into view, he changed direction toward us with that same terrible directness, like a compass needle finding north. Marianne didn't slow down and didn't speed up. She just held our speed. And we went by and he was behind us. And in the mirror, I watched him keep coming for a few seconds after there was no chance, and then stop in the middle of the road. And something about the stopping was worse than the chasing. "That's what they mean," I said. My voice came out flat. "That's what they mean," Marianne said. Neither of us said anything else for a mile. The radio was static now, all the way across the band. I turned it off. The Sable Creek crossing is where Route 2 ended for us, and it's where I first did something that mattered. We came down a long grade toward the creek through a stand of trees, and even before the road bottomed out, I could feel Marianne easing off, and I could see why. The water. There'd been rain in the night, more than I'd registered. And Sable Creek, which the atlas showed as a thin blue thread, was up and brown and moving with purpose, out past its banks and into the trees on both sides. The bridge was one of those low concrete deck county crossings, guardrail on each side, maybe 80 feet across. The far half of it looked fine. The near approach did not. Marianne stopped us 30 yards short. "It's over the deck on the low end," she said. "But it's a concrete deck. It's built for that. And the water's already dropping a... Look at the mud line. It was higher." She pointed. There was a stain on the guardrail post a good foot above the current water. "I've taken a bus over this with an inch on the deck. We can idle across in the center." I looked at it. Then I asked her to let me out. "Russ, 90 seconds. I put on my vest, out of 30 years of reflex more than any real need, and my gloves, and I walked down toward the near end of that bridge, and I looked at the thing my wife could not see from the driver's seat, because she was reading the water, and I was reading the road. The problem wasn't the water on the deck. She was right about the deck. The problem was the approach, the 20 feet of asphalt, before the concrete started, the part that sits on fill dirt instead of on the bridge's own footings. Floodwater had been over that too. And when it came back down, it had taken some of the shoulder with it. There was a seam along the right edge, a clean, dark crack running parallel to the road for 15 feet. And behind the guardrail, the ground had slumped. You could see the gap open under the rail where the dirt had pulled away and dropped 6, 8 inches. On the upstream side, the culvert that should have carried the creek under the approach was blocked with debris. A whole small tree jammed in it, which meant the water had gone over the top instead of through, which is exactly how you scour out fill from under a road. I've written that loss 100 times. Not this exact one. This exact kind. Road looks fine. Road is fine. Right up until something heavy gets its outside wheels near the edge and the whole undercut shoulder lets go and takes the vehicle into the creek. I walked back. Marianne had the window down. "Deck's fine," I said. "You called that right. It's the approach. The right shoulder's undermined, the fill's washed out under it, and it hasn't caved yet because nothing heavy's been over it since the water dropped. A car might thread the center and never touch it. But we're 12,000 pounds, and we track wide. And if you drift 6 inches right coming onto the deck, that edge goes and we go with it." She looked at me for a second. It's a look I'd never quite gotten from her before. Not doubt. The opposite. She was checking my work the way I'd been checking hers all morning and finding it good. "Center's not enough room," she said. "If I hug the yellow line?" "There's no yellow line, and there's a delivery truck." I'd seen it and not mentioned it because it wasn't the main problem. But it was a problem. A box truck abandoned, nose down, against the far guardrail, half on the bridge, taking up a third of the far end. You'd have to swing right to get around it after the deck, right into the bad shoulder. A pickup, sure, not us. Marianne put the RV in park, which she almost never did unless she meant to stop and think. She looked at the bridge, at the truck, at the crack I couldn't have expected her to see from up there. Then she looked at the atlas open on my knee, at the blue line, and where it crossed that thin blue thread of creek. "That's Route 2, she said quietly. "That's Route 2, I said. She got out. She walked down to the bridge herself, and I let her. And I watched her see it, watched her follow the crack with her eyes. Look at the slumped ground behind the rail. Look at the plugged culvert. She crouched at the edge of the good pavement and looked along the seam the way you'd sight down a board to see if it's true. When she stood up, she had dirt on one knee and a different set to her mouth. "Okay," she said when she got back in. "Okay, you're right." She said it plainly, no drama, the way you'd confirm a weather report. But I knew her, and I could hear what it cost because Route 2 had a mark next to it in the atlas that meant she'd trusted it. And now she was going to have to cross it out. She backed us up the grade, 40 feet, 60, to a farm gate wide enough to turn around in. And she turned us around, which in that vehicle on that road took 11 separate movements and both of us watching the mirrors. And then we were pointed back the way we'd come, and Route 2 was behind us, closed, and I had the pen in my hand. "Do it," she said. "I don't want to look at it and forget." I drew a line through R2. The trouble with going backward is that the world doesn't stay where you left it. We'd come down to Sable Creek through country that had been empty and calm. Going back up out of it, 40 minutes later, it wasn't the same country. At the crossroads with the gas station, the one with the man there, were now 3 cars stopped at odd angles. And no man, and I didn't look too hard for him. 2 miles on, at a spot where the county road met a state highway. There was a line of traffic where there'd been none. Cars coming from the direction of the city, from the direction of 47, spilling out onto these back roads exactly the way Marianne had said the county would once it figured out the fast way was gone. The overflow had found us. And once, off to the north, across a hayfield, I saw a group of them. 5, 6 people, moving across the open ground in that same wrong way, spread out, not together, all drifting in the same general direction like something was pulling them. They were a quarter-mile off, and they didn't turn toward us, and we didn't stop to find out if they would. "We can't go back toward town," Marianne said. It wasn't a question. Everything behind us is filling up with 47. Then where? She'd been thinking about it since the bridge, I could tell, because she had the answer ready, and she didn't like it. Route 3. I found it in the atlas, the faint double-inked line, the one she'd argued with herself over. It didn't go anywhere useful in a hurry. It wandered south and then east along the base of a ridge, on roads so small the atlas rendered them as gray hairlines. And at one point, it left even those and followed something that wasn't quite a road at all. A dashed line the legend called unimproved. "You don't like this one," I said. "I hate this one," she said. And for the first time all morning there was something almost like humor in it, the bleak kind. It's narrow, it's slow. Half of it's chip seal that's been potholing since the Clinton administration. And there's a grade on the back of Harmon Ridge that I've had to reroute a bus off of twice. But it's the one road out of this corner of the county that nobody's going to think of because nobody uses it, because it's terrible. Will the RV make it? She didn't answer right away, and I noticed that she didn't answer right away. "Most of it," she said finally. "Most of it's fine. There's one spot I want to look at before I promise you anything." We stopped at a place called the Corley Feed and Farm Supply around 11, because Marianne's hands were shaking on the wheel, and she wouldn't admit it, and I made her. It was closed, obviously. A long steel building with a gravel lot big enough to turn a semi in. Set back off the road with good sight lines in both directions, which was the real reason she agreed to stop there. You could see anything coming for half a mile. We pulled around the back where the RV wasn't visible from the road, and we sat. And I made coffee on the little propane burner because the electric wouldn't work off the depleted battery. And we ate crackers and the last of a summer sausage we'd had in the fridge, and for 20 minutes we just were 2 people in a parked vehicle, which after that morning felt close to a vacation. "How many times?" I said. "Did you update these?" She wrapped both hands around the coffee. "I don't know. Dozens. Every time a bridge got posted, or a culvert failed, or the county closed something for construction, I'd think, okay, does that touch one of mine? Usually it didn't. Sometimes it did." She sipped. Route 2 used to cross the creek 2 miles upstream at the old iron bridge until they closed the iron bridge for wade-in. 2019, I think. So I moved it to Sable Creek. That was the update. That's the whole exciting secret. She looked at me sideways. "It's not a bunker in the woods, Russ. It's just knowing which roads are lying to you." I didn't think it was a bunker in the woods. You thought it was worrying for a hobby. I let that be true because it was. "I thought," I said carefully, "that if I agreed the roads could all close at once, I'd have to agree that the kind of day where the roads all close at once could actually happen to us. And I didn't want to live in that house, the one where you're always half-packed." I turned the coffee cup around. "So I told myself you were the one with the problem. It was easier than the alternative." She didn't jump on it. She didn't forgive me either. She just nodded, slowly, like she was filing it next to the other things she knew about me. The alternative being what? That you were just right, and I couldn't stand to sit in that. You're still not fully sitting in it, she said, but not unkindly. You made me stop at Ridgeview this morning to look at 47 with your own eyes when I'd already told you it was gone. I did. And when we're standing at the spot on Route 3 that I'm worried about, you're going to want to look at it yourself instead of taking my word. I am, I admitted. Good, she said. And I hadn't expected that. Because I want you to. I've been reading this county from the driver's seat for 20 years, and I've never once had somebody in the passenger seat who could tell me what the road's doing underneath. You caught the bridge. I'd have put us in the creek. She drank the last of her coffee and set the cup in the holder. I don't need you to run this. I need you to see the half I can't. It's a strange thing to be handed the exact shape of your own usefulness by someone who spent the morning being right without you. I didn't have a clean feeling about it. Part of me was glad. Part of me was still small and sore about a book of routes I'd never been shown. Both parts, I've come to think, were allowed to be there. Route 3, for a long stretch, was almost beautiful. That's the part nobody wants to hear when you tell this. It was noon, and we were the only thing moving on a chip seal road at the foot of a green ridge, and the country was so empty and so ordinary that if you didn't have the radio's dead static in your memory, you could have believed we were finally taking one of the trips we'd bought the thing for. Marianne relaxed into it. She knew these roads in her body. She'd point with 2 fingers off the wheel. School bus turnaround up here, wide enough for us. I've used it. And there it would be, a gravel apron on the outside of a curve. And she'd know it the way you know the stairs in your own house in the dark. She caught things I never would have. A road that looked perfectly good she waved off. That dips through a hollow in the hollow ponds. I don't like it after last night's rain. And took a longer way around that added 10 minutes and, I have no doubt, saved us. She knew which of 2 forks reconnected and which one dead-ended at a quarry. She knew that the bridge over the North Fork had a 5-ton posting, which we were under, empty, but which she recited from memory anyway, because it was the kind of thing she'd spent her life reciting. And a couple of times, quietly, she flagged the RV itself. That's tight, she'd say, easing us around a switchback where the guardrail came in close and the drop went down through trees. And she'd have to swing wide into the oncoming lane to make the back end clear. And there was nobody coming, thank God, but she'd say it out loud. That's tight for us. A pickup wouldn't think twice. Once a farm road forked off to the right at an angle too sharp for our wheelbase, a shortcut she'd have taken in a car. And she went the long way instead, and I heard her mutter, "Can't make that turn in this." I heard all of it. I even understood all of it. But understanding a limitation one flagged instance at a time is not the same as seeing where the whole set of them is pointing. And the whole set of them was pointing at one place. And I didn't add them up until we got there. We met the Becketts at a place where 3 bad roads came together, because in that corner of the county, there was really only one way to funnel toward Harmon Ridge, and anybody trying to get out the back of the county the way we were was going to end up on it. There was a pickup, and a smaller pickup pulled onto the grass at a Y intersection, and 2 people standing between them with a map. A real paper map, which is what made Marianne slow down instead of speed up. Anybody reading a map right now, she said, is thinking, not panicking. We stopped a polite distance off, and I got out, and the man came to meet me halfway with his hands visible, which I appreciated without quite knowing I was watching for it. He was in his early 60s, heavy-set, sunburned in the permanent way, in a feed store cap and a shirt with a torn pocket. "Marlo Beckett," he said. "This is my niece, Tessa." The woman lifted a hand. Early 40s, sharp-eyed, tired. "You come up from the Corley Road?" she asked, before either of us had properly said hello. And I understood that we were skipping straight past the pleasantries to the only conversation that mattered. "From Corley, yeah. Sable Creek's out. The approach on the south side is undermined. We couldn't cross. Everything back toward town's filling up with 47 traffic." Marlo swore, softly, and looked at the map. "That's what we were afraid of. We come from the other side, Steuben way. And Steuben's worse. There's people on that road, the sick ones, a lot of them, moving up out of the city along the interstate feeders." He said the sick ones, carefully, like he was still deciding what to call them. "We got out ahead of it, but it's behind us now. We can't go back either." "So everybody's funneling to Harmon Ridge," Marianne said. She'd come up beside me. "Same as us." "You know the Ridge Road?" Tessa asked her. 20 years of school routes. You?" "We've got a place off it. Marlo's got equipment out past the grade. He sold ag equipment 40 years. Half the county's tractors came through his lot. We know the roads." Tessa looked at our RV, and I watched her do the thing I should have already done. She looked at the length of it and the overhang. And she looked back toward the ridge. And something crossed her face. "You came all this way in that?" "So far," Marianne said. "You planning to take it over the grade?" "That's the plan." Tessa and Marlo traded a look. It was quick. It wasn't unkind. But it was the look of two people who knew something we hadn't gotten to yet and were deciding how to say it. "You got fuel?" Marlo asked instead. "Water? Food?" "Several days of all three," Marianne said. "You?" "Half a tank each and not much else. We left fast." He rubbed the back of his neck. "You've got the supplies and the maps. We've got the local roads and vehicles that'll—" He stopped himself. "Vehicles that'll take the grade. Maybe we help each other. But you're going to want to see the grade first." "We were going to look at it anyway," Marianne said. And there it was again, that new easiness between her professional caution and mine. The two of us saying the same word at the same time. Look at it and meaning it in two different useful ways. We convoyed the last 4 miles to the grade, their 2 trucks and our RV. And every one of those miles, the road got smaller. The chip seal gave out to gravel. The gravel narrowed until the trees closed in on both sides and branches scraped the top of the RV. A sound like nails on a slate that set my teeth on edge. Twice Marianne had to fold the mirror in. Once we came to a low water crossing over a trickle of a stream, and she stopped and made me get out and check it, and it was fine. But the checking took 5 minutes, and Marlo's trucks just idled across it while we did. And I saw, without wanting to see it, how much heavier and slower and more fragile we were on this road than they were. Then the trees opened, and we came to the bottom of the grade, on the back of Harmon Ridge. And I got out and walked up it. And I understood everything all at once. Marlo walked up with me. Tessa stayed with the vehicles. Marianne came too, atlas in her hand. And the 3 of us stood at the bottom and looked at the thing that was going to end part of our lives that day, though I didn't know to think of it that way yet. The grade was a single-lane cut angling up the shoulder of the ridge, maybe 300 yards of it, with the hill rising steep on the left and the ground falling away on the right, down into timber. It was old, you could see it had been graded and regraded over decades, a working road for the farms and woodlots up top. And it was, for a pickup, entirely passable. Marlowe's trucks could have gone up at that minute. But I read it the way I read Sable Creek, and it told me 3 things, and any one of them would have been enough. The first was width. The cut was made for farm trucks, and the RV was wider than a farm truck, and worse, longer. And the road didn't go straight up, it bent. A long left-hand curve about halfway that hugged the hill. And on the inside of that curve, the rock came in, and on the outside, the shoulder fell away. And there was no possible line through it that kept all 4 of our wheels on solid ground at once. A pickup could hug the rock and let its short body follow. Our back overhang would swing wide out over the drop side shoulder. And the drop side shoulder was the second problem, because the second thing was the shoulder itself. There'd been water down this grade too. In the night, you could see the rills cut into the gravel. The little fans of washed-out materials spread across the road. And on the outside of that curve, right where our back wheels would have to go, the edge was soft and rounded and eaten. The gravel gone from beneath it, the same undercut I'd seen at the creek, only worse, because there was more weight of hill above, pushing down, and more air below, waiting to receive it. It would hold a pickup. I did not believe, in my professional heart, that it would hold 12,000 pounds, coming around slow with the load out over the edge. And the third thing, the thing that took it from dangerous to no, was that there was no room to be wrong. At the creek, if I'd misjudged, we'd have been in 2 feet of water. Here, if the shoulder let go on that curve, we went off the drop side and down through timber. And that was the end of everything, the RV and the 2 of us and all of it. There was no version of trying it where being wrong was survivable. Marlowe was quiet beside me, letting me get there on my own. "Trucks make it," I said finally. It wasn't a question. "Trucks make it," he agreed. "I've hauled equipment up worse. You go slow, you keep your inside wheel on the rock through the bend. You're fine." He nudged a fan of washed gravel with his boot. "In something short. This bend'll eat you alive in something long." I walked up alone as far as the curve, to be sure, to not be the man who condemned a road from the bottom. I stood on the outside edge where our tires would run, and I put my weight on it. Easy at first, and then hard. And the gravel gave, a little, a settling, a whisper of material sliding off into the trees below, and I stepped back off it fast. And my heart was going, and that was my answer. I'd felt roads do that before, in the seconds before they weren't roads anymore. I came back down. Marianne was standing where I'd left her with the atlas open in both hands and her reading glasses pushed up on her head. And she watched me come and she read my face before I said a word, the same way she'd read it at Sable Creek. And this time, there was nothing in her expression to check. There was nothing to verify. She'd been watching me test the edge with my own weight, and she'd seen the gravel go. "Could a pickup make it?" she said, making me say it out loud, making it real. "A pickup makes it," I said. "Their trucks make it right now, today." I made myself say the rest. Could I get us up there? I might. But I'd be gambling everything we've got on that outside shoulder, holding through the bend. And I felt it move, just standing on it. I'm not putting 12,000 pounds on that edge, Marianne. Not for any road. Marlowe had drifted back down, toward Tessa and the trucks, giving us room, and I was grateful to him for it. Marianne looked up the grade. She looked at it for a long time. The curve, the soft outside edge, the trees below. Then she looked down at the atlas, at the county spread open across both pages, at the 3 lines she'd drawn there over 8 years at a kitchen table and a work desk and God knew where else. 2 of them had my pen through them now. R1, R2, crossed out, both of them, that morning in that vehicle. Her finger came down and rested on the third line, the faint one, the one she'd gone over twice, the one she'd argued with herself about and hated and kept anyway, because she never let herself run out of roads. "The road's still there," I said, quietly, because it was, and because I couldn't stand the way she was looking at it. "For them." She didn't look up. Her chin moved, just slightly, toward Marlowe's trucks idling at the bottom of the grade. Then she looked back down the gravel at our RV, sitting there behind them, sitting there with our water and our food and our bed and our maps and everything she'd thought of and packed and maintained. Our shelter, the box she'd kept alive for 9 years, for exactly this day. "Not for us," she said. She folded the atlas closed, halfway, her thumb marking the county. Then she stopped. She opened it again and looked at the 3 lines one more time. And I understood what she was doing, because I do it too. When a loss doesn't add up, and I go back through the file a 3rd time, hoping the numbers changed. She was looking for the 4th line, the reroute, the way she'd always had, the other way around. The road nobody thinks of. It wasn't there. She'd drawn every road out of that corner of the county that a vehicle could take, and 2 of them were closed, and the 3rd one was closed to us. And there was no 4th line, because she'd never needed one. Because in 20 years of rerouting buses, the one thing she'd never had to solve for was the bus itself, becoming the thing that couldn't go. "I don't have another route for this vehicle," she said. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't cry, and she didn't raise her voice. She said it the way she'd tell me a bridge was posted for weight, a fact about the world, flatly stated, so that neither of us would waste time pretending otherwise. But I'd been married to her for 31 years, and I heard the floor of it drop out. This was the edge of the thing she'd built. She had planned every road, and she had not planned for the day the roads were fine and we were the problem. And she had just walked up to the exact border of everything she knew how to do. And there was nothing on the other side of it that she'd drawn. I looked at our RV. I looked at Marlowe's trucks, short and light and idling. The trucks that could go up that grade in the next 10 minutes and be over the ridge and gone. I thought about our water in the tank, and our food in the little cabinets, and the bed in the back that was still made up from the last trip we never took, and about how much of my wife was in that box, how many years of quiet, unthanked preparation, and about what it would take to walk away from all of it. And I thought about the shape of the problem, which was not, I saw now, the road. "Then maybe the route isn't what we change," I said. Marianne turned her head and looked at me, and I watched her get there, watched the sentence go in and land and open. She's quicker than I am about most things, and she was quicker about this. She didn't say, "What do you mean?" She looked past me at Marlowe's 2 trucks idling at the bottom of the grade, short and light. And then she looked at our RV sitting behind them, and I saw her understand exactly what I was proposing, and dislike it in the same instant. "We can't take the RV in pieces," she said, which was her way of arguing, by stating my case back to me so she could hear how much it cost. "No, we take what we can carry. We leave the box." I kept my voice level, because I knew what the box was to her, or I was starting to. Their trucks make the grade. We fill their trucks with the parts of this that matter, and we go over the ridge in something that fits the road. Their trucks are half full of fuel and already carrying their own supplies. She wasn't rejecting it. She was doing the thing she did, running the numbers out loud, finding the walls of the problem before she'd agree to stand inside it. How much bed space does Marlowe actually have? How much can they carry over that grade without becoming the thing that's too heavy for the shoulder? We solve one weight problem by making theirs. So we find out, I said. We ask him. She looked at the RV again, and her jaw worked once, and I understood that I was watching her let go of something in real time, and that I should not narrate it for her or tell her it was only a vehicle, because by now I knew it wasn't only anything. It was 9 years of oil changes nobody thanked her for. It was a water tank she'd topped off out of habit 2 days before the world ended. It was the one physical object that had made her invisible planning visible, and I was asking her to leave it at the bottom of a hill. Okay, she said. Let's find out what fits. Marlowe had good news and bad news, and he gave them in that order the way honest men do. The good news was that his older 4x4 had an 8-foot bed and a headache rack, and he'd hauled parts and feed and small equipment in it for 40 years, so he had a real sense of what it would and wouldn't take up the grade. Loaded reasonable, I'll get it up, he said, walking the length of the bed with his hand on the rail. It's not the weight so much as where you put it. Keep it low, keep it forward, don't let it ride high and shift on the bend. The smaller truck, Tess's, was a mid-size with a shorter box and a back seat, and it could take people and soft cargo, but not much heavy. The bad news was fuel. Marlowe's tank read a little under half, Tess's a little over. That gets us over the ridge into my yard easy, he said. Past that, I'm not making promises. My place isn't the end of anywhere. It's a stopping point. We've got no way to move the RV's fuel, I said. I'd already looked. There was no siphon, no fuel can, nothing but the tank under the floor and a filler neck that didn't offer itself up to anybody. That stays with the box. Marlowe nodded like a man who'd expected worse. Then we pack smart and we don't dawdle. What have you got in there worth carrying? That was the question. And answering it took the next 40 minutes, and those were 40 minutes I'll remember longer than the ridge. We backed the RV off the road onto the wide gravel apron of the school bus turnaround Marianne had used to turn us around 100 times in her working life. And we opened every cabinet, and we started making 2 piles on a blue tarp Marlowe pulled from his bed. The medicines went first, without discussion. Marianne's blood pressure pills, my statin, the whole first aid kit, the bottle of amoxicillin left from my tooth in the spring that neither of us had thrown out. Then the atlas, which never went into a pile at all. She folded it once and put it inside her jacket. And I noticed she did it before anything else. And neither of us said a word about it. Then it got harder. Because after the obvious things, you reach the things that are only obvious to one person. I pulled the bedding, the good comforter, the pillows, the flannel sheets, and set it toward the leave pile. Because it was bulk, pure bulk. 4 cubic feet of soft that would eat 1/3 of Marlowe's bed and keep us warm exactly 1 degree better than the sleeping bags. Marianne watched me do it and didn't stop me on the comforter or the sheets. But when I reached for the 2 sleeping bags and moved them to leave 2, she put her hand flat on them. No, she said, those we take. We've got jackets. It got down to 50 last night, Russ, and we don't have the box to sleep in anymore. In 2 days, it could be 40. You want to find out what 40 feels like on a metal floor in a barn with no bag? She wasn't sharp about it. She was informational, which was worse. Because she was right, and I'd been thinking about volume instead of nights. I plan for the night we haven't had yet. That's the whole job. I moved the sleeping bags back. Fair. That was the first one I got wrong. There were others coming on both sides, and I want to be honest about the shape of it. Because it wasn't Russell learns to trust Marianne, and everything's smooth after. It was two people who each saw half the problem, colliding gently over a tarp, catching each other's blind spots, one item at a time. Because a few minutes later, I caught hers. We'd agreed on the water situation, which was brutal in its simplicity. The RV's fresh tank held maybe 40 gallons, and there was no way to move 40 gallons of water. We had what fit in containers a 6-pack of bottled water in the door, 2 empty gallon jugs Marianne rinsed and filled from the tank, and a green 2.5-gallon camp jug with a spigot that we filled to the top. Call it 7 gallons of drinking water for 2 people. And we'd have to share even that logic with Marlo and Tessa. 40 gallons of clean water was going to sit in that tank and go stagnant, and it was the single hardest thing to walk away from, harder than the RV itself. And Marianne knew it. And so she started, quietly, without quite announcing it, adding a second food tote to the take pile, the big one with the canned chili and the case of chicken and the beans on top of the smaller one we'd already agreed on. I saw her do it. She saw me see her. "We already cut that tote," I said. "We might not eat again for—" "We can't take the RV in pieces," I said, using her own line back at her the way she'd used mine on me. And I watched it land the same way. Marlo's bed is Marlo's bed. Every pound of that tote is a pound off the shoulder margin on that bend. You'd rather have chili and go off the drop side? She stood there with a hand on the tote, and it was maybe the only moment all day I saw her genuinely stuck. Not between two roads, but between two versions of caution, the one that hoards against the future and the one that keeps you light enough to survive the present. Her whole system was built on what might we need. Mine that day had to be what can we physically carry. Both of us were right, and only one of us could win the tote. "One tote," Marlo said from the truck, not looking up from where he was lashing his own gear forward. "I mean, no offense, ma'am. One tote, and I'll eat with you off it, and we'll all be lighter on that bend. I've watched load shift take a truck off a grade. It's quick, and it's ugly, and there's no undo on it." Marianne took her hand off the second tote. "One tote," she agreed, and she put it back in the RV, on the dinette bench, where it would sit with 40 gallons of water and a comforter and a life we'd bought for trips we never took. We didn't get to finish in peace, because we were never going to get to finish in peace. Tessa had stayed up by the road, watching the way we'd come, and she came down at a fast walk that wasn't quite a run. "Vehicle," she said. Way back down the Corley Road. Stopped, sat a second, backed up and went out of sight. She was steady about it, but her eyes weren't. "And there's, I don't know, 2 people maybe out in the Hollis field to the north, walking, the way they walk." Marlo straightened up off the truck. "How far out?" "Half mile, more. But they're this side of the fence line now." That changed the arithmetic from pack right to pack fast. Nobody said so. We just all started moving quicker, and the tarp piles resolved themselves under pressure the way they should have from the start. The take pile getting honest, the leave pile getting large. My work bag went in, gloves and vest and the good light and the tape measure. And I heard Marlo grunt approval at the vest, the reflective kind that's worth having. Somebody standing at a bad crossing waving in a truck. Flashlights, all of them. The 2 phone battery packs, one dead, one half. Practical clothes stuffed into a duffel. I overpacked shirts, and Marianne pulled 3 back out without comment, and I let her. We were even. The good camp stove, small and folding, took the place of the whole 2-burner unit built into the RV that we obviously could not take. And then I did the second thing I got wrong that day. And Marianne caught it. and that one mattered more than the sleeping bags. I'd built the leave pile up near the RV door, and riding on top of it, because it was folded flat and looked like tarp scrap to me, was Marianne's roll of route sheets, the printed detour maps from her transportation work, laminated county sections, the physical backup to the atlas. I'd have left them. I had the atlas in my head as the map and everything else as duplicate. She came out of the RV with the last duffel, saw the roll on the leave pile, and stopped. "Those are the detour sheets," she said. "We've got the atlas." The atlas is one book. The atlas gets wet, gets lost, stays in a truck that drives off without us. She picked the roll up off the leave pile, and this time I didn't argue, because I finally heard the difference between the tote and the sheets. The tote was hoarding. The sheets were redundancy, the same instinct that had made her keep 3 routes instead of 1. The exact instinct I'd spent 8 years finding excessive. And here I was, on the worst day of our lives, about to leave it on a tarp because I decided a book in a jacket was enough. 1 point of failure. She'd never once in her professional life accepted 1 point of failure, and I just tried to hand her one to save 2 pounds. "Take them," I said. "You're right. Split them up, half in Marlowe's truck, half in Tessa's, so if we get separated, nobody's blind." She looked at me for a second, the same look from Sable Creek. "That's good," she said. "That's good, actually." And she split the roll. And I understood I'd finally done the thing she'd asked for. At Corley, I'd taken her contingency logic and applied it to something she hadn't thought to. And she'd taken my weight logic and let go of a tote. And somewhere in the last 40 minutes on that tarp, we'd stopped being a planner and a skeptic and started being 2 people packing 1 load. The last thing Marianne did before we left the RV was ordinary, and it was the only thing that could have been. She didn't make a speech. She went inside, and I heard the click of the propane valve going shut. The little hiss dying. She unplugged the fridge that wasn't running anyway. She came out and pulled the door closed and turned the key in the deadbolt lock, the way you'd lock a house you were coming back to, which we both knew we weren't. And then she stood for 1 breath with her hand flat on the door skin, not patting it, not saying goodbye to it, just confirming it was shut, the way she confirmed everything. And she stepped down off the running board and didn't look at it again. I looked at it. I'll admit that. 9 years of a plan I'd never respected, sitting off a gravel turnaround at the bottom of Harmon Ridge with the doors locked and 40 gallons of water in the tank, waiting for nobody. I thought I understood then, some fraction of what it had been to her. All those years of maintaining a thing against a day nobody else believed was coming. And then having the day come, and the thing not fit through the last gate. I didn't say any of that. I picked up the duffel and carried it to Marlowe's truck. We loaded low and forward, the way he'd said. People sorted themselves without much talk. Marianne and I would ride with Marlowe in the 4x4 with a heavy load. Tessa would take the lighter truck with the soft cargo and follow. Marlowe drove. I got the middle. Marianne took the window with the atlas in her jacket, and the roll of sheets split between the 2 trucks. And we pulled out of the turnaround and left our RV behind us in the mirror, small and white and locked. And then the trees closed, and it was gone. The grade took us 15 minutes, and it aged me 5 years. Marlowe led. He put Tessa well back. I don't want 2 of us on that bend at once. 1 truck's weight is 1 truck's problem. And he took the climb in low, slow, his window down, his elbow out, reading the gravel the way Marianne read intersections. I rode the middle and watched the drop side shoulder come up on the right, the soft Eaton edge I'd stood on an hour before and felt give. And Marlowe put his inside tires right up against the rock. and let the truck's short body follow the line, and never once let the load ride out over the bad edge. It was completely ordinary driving, and it was the best driving I've ever watched, because it was a man doing a hard thing at exactly the speed it needed, and no faster. "There she is," he said quietly at the bend. And I felt the back end of the truck track around inside the rock, the whole vehicle just short enough and just light enough and just far enough from the drop that the shoulder never mattered at all. In the RV, we'd have had 4 feet of overhang swinging out over that eaten edge. In the truck, we had inches to spare and used every one of them, and it was fine. Marianne watched the shoulder go by out her window. She didn't say anything. But when we crested the top of the grade and the road leveled into a rough flat cut across the shoulder of the ridge, she let out a breath I don't think she'd known she was holding. And she said, not to me exactly, "It just needed the right vehicle," which was the closest she'd come to saying the plan hadn't been wrong, only the machine. And I let it sit because it was true, and because agreeing out loud would have been one word too many. Behind us, Tessa took the bend the same way, slow, inside line, and came up over the top. And then all 4 of us, and both trucks, were on top of Harmon Ridge, with the whole failing county behind and below us. And for about 90 seconds, nobody said anything at all. Marlowe's equipment property was 2 miles along the ridgetop, and down a private gravel lane that split off from the county road at a cattle gate he had a key to. It was not a refuge. I want to be clear, because for about an hour, it felt like one, and it wasn't. It was a working man's yard, a long steel equipment shed, open at one end, with a concrete pad and a Raris workbench along the back wall, and pegboard hung with hand tools gone brown at the edges. There was an old tractor under a tarp and a hay rake, and a disc that hadn't turned dirt in a decade. There was a smaller shed, and a gravel apron, and a stock tank fed off a shallow well with a hand pump that Marlowe primed and worked until it coughed up water the color of weak tea. Let it run, it clears. There was no house. There was no generator. There was a roof and walls and a gate and high ground. And after the morning we'd had, it was the finest real estate in the county. We pulled both trucks into the open end of the equipment shed, out of sight of the lane, and we stopped. And the not moving hit all 4 of us at once the way it does. Marlowe sat in the driver's seat a second with both hands on the wheel and then said, "Well," and got out. Tessa sat on the tailgate of her truck and put her face in her hands, not crying, just resting the weight of the day somewhere. Marianne stayed in her seat with the atlas still inside her jacket, and I could see her wanting to get it out and not letting herself yet, giving us all the 90 seconds. Then we unloaded, and that's when the cost showed itself. It's one thing to agree, at the bottom of a grade with infected in the north field, that you'll take 1 food tote and 7 gallons of water and a stove and 2 sleeping bags. It's another to stack all of it on Marlowe's workbench and see how small it is. We spread our take pile out on the concrete under the shed light. There was no shed light. We used a flashlight. That was part of it too. And it was 2 people's survival. And it was a duffel, a tote, a first aid kit, a green water jug, and 2-gallon bottles and a 6-pack, a folding stove, 2 sleeping bags, a bag of medicines, my work bag, and a roll of laminated county sheets, in the RV that would have fit in 1 cabinet. It was now everything we had. And there was no bed to sleep in, and no walls to close behind us at night, and no bathroom, and no tank of water, and no roof that was ours. Marianne stood over it, and I saw her count it, the way she counted everything. And I saw her not like the number. "We had 4 or 5 days of easy in the box," she said. "This is..." She stopped. "This is careful days, not easy days." "Careful days," I agreed. We'll do careful. Marlowe had come over. He looked at our small pile and then at his own. Theirs was smaller. Honestly, they'd left in a hurry with less. And he did a thing that told me most of what I needed to know about him. He didn't offer to combine, and he didn't hold his separate. He said, "We ought to split it 4 ways across 2 trucks, not by whose it is, by what happens if we get cut apart." He nudged the water with his boot. "Right now, if Tessa's truck drives off without this one, she's got no water and no medicine and no maps. That's a bad way to organize a day." Marianne straightened up like a woman who'd heard her native language spoken by a stranger. Because that was hers. That was the exact logic of 3 routes instead of 1, redundancy against separation. And it had come out of a retired equipment dealer's mouth about a stock of water and a first aid kit. And I watched her take genuine pleasure in it. The small, clean pleasure of finding out you're not the only person in the county who thinks 2 moves ahead. "Yes," she said. "Each truck carries water, food, a light, first aid, and a set of the sheets. If we split, neither of us is helpless." She was already moving to do it. "Russ, you figure the weight so we don't put Tessa's whole load over her back axle." I figured the weight. It was the first job anybody had handed me all day that was purely mine. And I did it. Kept the water low and centered, split the food, put a flashlight and a slice of the first aid kit in each cab, where a person could reach it without getting out. It took 20 minutes, and it was the least dramatic thing we did that whole day. And it might have been the most important. And by the end of it, we weren't 2 groups sharing a shed. We were 1 load in 2 trucks, which is a different thing, and everybody felt it. Marianne got the atlas out at dusk, on the workbench, under the flashlight. And that's when the real problem showed itself. And it wasn't a road closing. It was that she was out of lines. Route 3 was never supposed to end here, she said. She had the county spread open and her finger on Marlowe's yard, and she traced the faint double-inked line up over the ridge and off the edge of where she'd drawn it. The whole point of 3 was that it dumps out onto Route 9 north of the ridge, and Route 9 takes you clear out of the county, out past where the interstate mess reaches. That was the connection. Get over the ridge, catch 9, gone. She looked up. "So, Route 9, that's the next move." And Marlowe, who'd been leaning on the bench, shook his head slow. "9's no good," he said. "Not since about noon, if what we saw's any guide. 9 runs down along the river and past the Steuben interchange. And Steuben's where Tessa and I came from. And Steuben's where the ones from the city are coming up. That road's got the same disease. 47's got everybody who bailed off the interstates finding 9 as the way around. And where the people go, the sick ones follow the people." He said it flatly. No drama. A man reporting a road condition. "You take 9 north tomorrow. You're driving right back into the thing we drove out of." I watched Marianne take that in. And this was the moment more than the RV. More than the grade where I saw her reach the true edge of the thing she'd built. Because she had a 4th move ready. Of course she did. Route 3 connected to Route 9, and Route 9 was the plan. And now a man she'd met 4 hours ago was telling her that the plan past the ridge was as dead as the 2 she'd crossed out that morning. And there was nothing behind it. No Route 9B. She'd drawn every public road out of the county that mattered, and the last of them was full of the dead. She didn't panic. I want that on the record. She looked at the map a long moment, and then she said, quietly, more to herself than to us, "I knew what to do, as long as I had one of my roads left." She looked up at me. "I'm out of roads." I'd have said the wrong thing about that a year ago. I'd have said we'll figure it out. The exact phrase, the reassure and dismiss, the thing I'd said at a kitchen table 8 years back that had cost me every root conversation since. I heard the old sentence line itself up in my mouth, and I put it down. Then we make the next one, I said. With what all four of us know. You've got the public roads. Marlowe's got the private ones. Tessa's got the whatever Tessa's got. I can tell you which crossings will hold. That's 4 people who each know a piece of a road you couldn't have drawn alone. I put my finger on the map next to hers. You've never had that in the passenger seat before. Now you've got 3 of them. She looked at my finger next to hers on the county she'd memorized. And something in her face changed, not relief exactly, something steadier than relief. No, she said. I never have. We didn't solve it that night. We ate cold chili off the folding stove. Marlowe had been serious. He ate with us off the one tote, and Tessa did too. And it was the 4 of us around a workbench passing a can, which is not a survival scene anyone writes, but it's the one we had. We slept in the shed, Marianne and I in the 2 sleeping bags on a bed of feed sacks Marlowe pulled down from a loft. And it was hard, and it was cold, and it was about 44 degrees by the little thermometer on the wall. And I lay there and thought about the comforter locked in the RV 2 miles and 1 ridge behind us, and understood exactly why she'd fought me for the bags. Marianne didn't sleep much. Neither did I. Somewhere in the middle of the night, she said into the dark, "You'd have left the detour sheets." I would have. That would have killed us. Maybe not today. But someday the Atlas goes in a ditch, and the sheets are all we've got. And I'd be sitting there knowing they were on a tarp at the bottom of the ridge. I know, I said. You caught it. That's the job. I turned my head toward where she was. I spent a long time thinking your redundancy was you not trusting the world to be all right. It's not that, is it? It's you not trusting one thing to hold. Those are different. She was quiet a while. You never asked what it was, she said. For 8 years. You decided it was worry, and you were kind about it. And you never once asked me to explain the actual logic. Because if you'd asked, you'd have had to take it seriously. And then you'd have had to live in the house with me, where bad things could happen. It wasn't an accusation. It was just accurate. Which from Marianne was its own kind of hard. So I stopped bringing it to the table. And that's on me. That part, I let it go underground instead of making you look at it. I could have made you look at it. I chose the quiet way. Because the quiet way was easier than the fight. Because the quiet way still got the routes drawn, she said. The fight might not have. I optimized for the routes existing. I didn't optimize for you and me, both knowing they existed. That was a choice, and it had a cost. And the cost is that you found out who I am in an emergency instead of over a kitchen table, which is a hell of a way to introduce yourself to your own husband. I didn't answer that right away because it was true, and it deserved the silence. Then I said, for what it's worth, I like who you are in an emergency. She made a sound that in daylight would have been a laugh. It only took the apocalypse. It took the apocalypse for me to stop reassuring you long enough to notice, I said. That's on me, that part. You're right that they're not the same size, your thing and mine. You went quiet. I dismissed you for 8 years. Those aren't a matched set, and I'm not going to pretend they are. We left it there. There wasn't a resolution, and I didn't reach for one. You don't close 8 years in a feed shed at 2 a.m. But something had moved that hadn't moved before, and we both felt it. And then we actually slept a little. In the morning, we built the 4th road. And it took all four of us, and it took most of 2 hours. And it is the thing I'm proudest of from that whole week. Marianne started it, because starting was hers. She laid the atlas out, and she said the problem plainly. We need to get from this ridge to somewhere out past where the Steuben spill reaches, without touching 9 and without touching 47. Everything I know says that's impossible, because the only public roads out of this corner are 9 and the Ridge Road, and the Ridge Road's behind us. She looked up. So it can't be public roads, which means it's not my map anymore. Somebody tell me what's not on the map. And Marlowe leaned in. There's roads not on your map, he said. There's 40 years of roads not on your map. He put a blunt finger down past the edge of the county grid. I sold equipment to every farm from here to the river. You buy a $100,000 combine, you don't drive it on the highway, so I know how the combines move. Which fields connect to which fields, whose lane goes through to whose lane, where the old cross-country hauling tracks are that used to be roads before the county quit maintaining them. He traced something that wasn't on the printed roads at all. Off my back gate, there's a ag lane runs the fence line down to the Pruitt place. Pruitt's got a road across his bottom ground to the old Dyer parcel. Dyer's lane comes out on Cutbank Road, which is a real road, county gravel. And Cutbank crosses the river up at the low bridge and comes out west of everything, past where any of this reaches. Marianne was already shaking her head, gently, the way she did when a route had a flaw. The low bridge at Cutbank was posted. 5-ton. I know it. I rerouted a bus off it. It's a wood deck bridge, and the county condemned the... That's the old low bridge, Tessa said. We all looked at her. She'd been quiet, sitting on her tailgate with a travel mug of the tea-colored well water. And she said it with the flat certainty of a woman who spent her working life being right about details other people got wrong. The old low bridge was condemned. You're right, she said. Dyer sold that whole bottom parcel 3 years ago. I did the paperwork, and through the co-op, the buyer put in a concrete box culvert crossing about a quarter-mile upstream of the old bridge because he needed to get his own equipment across, and the county wouldn't fix the bridge. It's not on any map because it's private and it's 3 years old. But it's rated for equipment, and it's a straight shot. She looked at Marianne. Your map's got the condemned bridge marked as the only crossing. There's a second one now. Nobody's told the map. Nobody's told the map. That was the whole thing, wasn't it? Marianne's entire genius was knowing which roads were lying to you. And here was a crossing the map didn't even know had been born. You're sure it connects through, Marlowe said. Dyer's lane to Cutbank. I'm sure who owns what, Tessa said. I'm not sure a truck can drive it. That's not my part. That's my part, I said. And that was the moment it came together. The four of us over that atlas. And I felt it happened Marianne's structure. Marlowe's 40 years of combine roads, Tessa's paper memory of who owned which dirt, and my job, which was to go find out whether the dirt would hold a truck. Nobody owned the route. It didn't exist inside any one head. It existed in the space between four people. And that was a thing Marianne had never had and had never known to want. I marked the atlas myself, which felt like a small trespass and also like being handed the keys to something. Marlowe penciled in his AG lane and the Pruitt cross-track rough, freehand off the edge of the printed grid, a line no cartographer would recognize. Tessa corrected him twice on which fence line was whose. I wrote a small asterisk question mark asterisk next to the new culvert crossing, because until I'd stood on it, it was a question, not a road. And Marianne took the pieces and drew them into a single line, a jagged pencil thing that wandered off her clean printed county and out into the white margin where the roads ran out, and connected back up to Cutbank on the far side. She looked at it a second when it was done. 3 ink lines, 2 crossed out, 1 ending at the ridge. And now a 4th, in pencil, in 4 people's information, in her hand. "That's not one of mine," she said. "No," I said. "It's better than one of yours. One of yours would have been on the map, and everybody would have thought of it, and it'd be full of the dead. This one nobody's thought of because it isn't real yet." I tapped my little question mark. "It becomes real when Marlowe and I go stand on that culvert." "Not you alone," Marianne said. "Fast." And I heard the fear under it, and I didn't fight it, because I'd earned the fear I was the man who'd made her stop at Ridgeview to look at a road she'd already told me was gone. "Not me alone," I agreed. "Marlowe knows the land. I know the crossing. We take his truck, we go look at the one part nobody can vouch for, and we come back, and we decide together. We don't move all 4 of us, and both loads onto a road we haven't seen. That's not caution, that's just not being stupid." I looked at her. "You taught me that this morning without meaning to. You never sent a bus onto a bridge you hadn't confirmed." Marlowe and I took the 4x4 empty and light, and we drove the 4th road backward as gate, the fence line lane. Pruitt's cross-track through a soybean bottom where the road was just 2 dirt ruts with grass up the middle, out to where Tessa said the culvert should be. We saw the dead twice on the way. Once a single figure standing in the middle of a distant field doing nothing, just standing, facing away, which was somehow the worst, the doing nothing. Marlowe slowed, watched it a second, and drove on. "It's not coming," he said. "Save the worry." The second time, it was 3 of them at the far end of Pruitt's Lane, near the road we were trying to avoid. And Marlowe simply took a different rut through the beans, a combine track that cut the corner, and we went around them at a distance, and they turned toward the engine and started our way. And by the time they'd converted standing into walking, we were past it and gone. That was the whole encounter. No shots, no chase, no horde. Just 2 men in a truck making a small route decision to keep 100 yards of soybeans between us and the thing that wanted us. And it working because we had a light truck and a man who knew the field. The culvert was where Tessa said it would be, and it was the whole point of everything. It was a good crossing, concrete box culvert, poured maybe 3 years back like she'd said. 2 big square barrels under a raised gravel roadbed. The creek running clear through both. Wide enough for equipment, built by a man who needed his own combine across and had paid for something that would hold it. I walked it end to end with my light and my tape, and 30 years behind my eyes. And I looked at the approaches, no undercut, no scour. The gravel crowned and draining right, the head walls sound, and I looked at the one thing that could have killed it, which was the upstream barrel. And the upstream barrel was 2/3 plugged with flood debris from the same rain that took Sable Creek. I stood there and read it the way I'd read the bridge the day before. And this time, it told me a good story with 1 bad paragraph. "It'll hold anything we've got," I told Marlowe. "The structure's fine, better than fine. This is the crossing the county should have built. But that upstream barrel's choked. And if we get another rain like the last one, the water can't get through and it comes over the road. And then we've got Sable Creek all over again, scour under the gravel, and the approach lets go." I looked at the sky, which was gray, and thinking about it. It's dry now. It holds now. But now has a shelf life. Marlowe looked at the plugged barrel. "So we don't dawdle getting everybody across." "So we don't dawdle." I looked at the debris. "And if we've got 20 minutes, we clear what we can off the front of that barrel. So if it does rain, it's got a fighting chance while we're on it. Not for us. For whoever comes after us and finds it." I don't fully know why I said that last part. Maybe because I'd spent the day thinking about a locked RV with 40 gallons of water waiting for nobody. And I didn't want to leave another crossing to fail on the next family the way Sable Creek had nearly failed on us. We spent 20 minutes with a hay hook and our hands dragging a tree and a mat of trash off the front of the upstream barrel, and we got maybe half of it, and the creek noticeably picked up through the cleared side, and it was not heroic, and it was filthy, and it was the right thing to do. Then we drove the fourth road forward to confirm it the culvert, Dyer's Lane, out to Cutbank Road, which was real and gravel and empty and open, running west into country that showed no sign at all of the thing eating the rest of the county. Tessa had been right about all of it. The road existed. Nobody had told the map one. We came back and we moved everybody, and the moving was where the plan changed on us, which is the part I'd been braced for since Sable Creek and the part that turned out to prove we'd become something. Here's what happened. When we brought both loaded trucks down through Pruitt's Bottom to the culvert, Marlowe leading, Tessa following. The two of us who'd scouted it, now guiding the sky, finally quit thinking about it and started to rain. Not the flood of 2 nights back, but steady, real rain. The kind that in 20 minutes changes what a road is. And I looked at that plugged upstream barrel we'd only half cleared, and I felt my stomach drop. A day ago, an hour ago, even this is where somebody would have frozen. Marianne would have looked at her map and had no answer, because the map didn't know about the culvert at all. I'd have wanted to stop and inspect until I was certain, and burn the exact minutes the rising creek was stealing. That's what we were, going in. That's not what we were coming out. I called it from the lead truck's window, and Marlowe stopped short of the crossing. "Water's going to start coming over," I said. "The cleared barrel's carrying, but that plugged one's going to back it up onto the road. And once it's over the road, I don't trust the approach fill. We've got minutes, not an hour." And nobody froze. That was the whole miracle of it. Marlowe said, "Then we don't stage and inspect. We just go one at a time, straight over, no stopping on the deck." Marianne, in the middle seat with the Atlas, said, "Light truck first. Tessa's shorter, she clears the approach easier. And if the fill's soft, the second truck learns from watching the first." Which was pure route logic applied in about 4 seconds to a crossing she'd never seen. Tessa said, "Talk me across. Somebody stand where I can see you." And I was already out of the truck with my reflective vest on the vest I'd almost left on the tarp, standing at the far head wall in the rain, waving her the line. "Keep it center. Keep it moving. Don't stop." And she came across the culvert with the water just beginning to skim the upstream edge of the gravel, and she made it clean and dry to the far side. Then Marlowe brought the heavy truck, with Marianne in it, and I read the crossing for him out loud as he came. The water was over the near edge now, an inch, moving, and I could see the gravel start to darken. And I made a fast call that was mine alone to make. "Left of center," I shouted, because the scour would start on the plugged barrel side, and the plugged barrel was on his right. And he took it left of center on my word. One man trusting another man's eyes on a road neither of them could fully see. And the truck came across steady and heavy, and never touched the softening right edge, and rolled up onto the good gravel of the far approach and stopped. And we were all 4 on the west side of the creek with both loads, and the rain coming down, and the crossing going bad behind us exactly as I'd said it would. Nobody had owned that. That's the thing I keep. Marianne read the vehicle order. Marlowe drove the line. Tessa had found the road 3 days and 3 years before any of us needed it. I read the water and called left of center. If any one of us had tried to run the whole thing alone, we'd have been in the creek. And the reason we weren't was that we'd finally stopped trying to each be the whole plan. The fourth road didn't work because it was a good road. It worked because it was made of 4 people. And 4 people, it turns out, can adjust a road while they're standing on it in a way that one person with a map never can. Cutbank Road took us west, and it was open, and around noon, Tessa and Marlowe led us up a long gravel climb to a cattle property that belonged to Marlowe's sister and her husband. High ground, a farmhouse and a barn, and a hill you could see for a mile. In every direction, from a real well with real water, and a family who opened the gate when they recognized Marlowe's truck, and asked no questions until we were inside it. It was not the end of anything. I want to be as careful about that as I was about the RV. It was a place with a well and a roof and high ground, and people who knew each other, several miles past where the dying county reached. And that was all it was. It was somewhere to stop, not somewhere to stay. We'd trade the last of the interstate mess for a new set of problems we couldn't see yet, and everybody standing in that farmyard knew it. But we had water we didn't have to ration by the ounce, and a barn out of the rain, and a hill we could watch from, and for a family that had started the day before dawn with a running RV engine and 3 routes and had now used up all 3, somewhere to stop, was more than I'd have bet on at the bottom of Harmon Ridge. We slept in the barn that night, on straw, warmer than the shed, both sleeping bags and a horse blanket Marlowe's sister brought out. Marianne and I lay there and didn't say much. There wasn't a speech coming, and we both knew it. Somewhere in the dark, she found my hand and held it, which she hadn't done in a while, in the ordinary years. That was the whole reconciliation, or the start of it, not words, just a hand in a barn. 2 people who'd spent one day finally doing the thing they were each good at in the same direction. I woke before dawn again, out of old habit, and there was no RV engine to wake me this time. Just cattle moving, almond, and rain finished, and gray coming up over the hill. Marianne was already up. Of course she was. She had the atlas open on the plank table in the farmhouse kitchen, under a battery lantern Marlowe's brother-in-law had dug up. And she had a pencil, and she was looking at it the way she looked at everything. Which is to say, she was already 3 moves past being safe and working on the 4th. I came and stood beside her. The 3 old lines were there. R1 crossed out in my pen at the Ridgeview overpass. R2 crossed out at Sable Creek. R3 ending in a small, careful mark at Harmon Ridge, with a note beside it in her hand I hadn't seen her write. RV number 2 words. The whole story of the worst day of our lives, in 2 words and a dash. And past all of it, running off her clean printed county into the white margin and back again, the 4th line. Marlowe's ag lane, Prewitt's cross track with Tessa's correction to the fence line. The culvert with my little asterisk question mark asterisk now inked over into a real mark and a note beside it in my own handwriting. Box culvert, okay, clear upstream barrel fails in flood. Cutbank Road. The climb to this hill. A jagged pencil thing in 4 people's hands, the first road in that atlas that Marianne Danner had not drawn alone. She was working past it now, out past the hill, penciling a soft line west towards something and stopping, unsure. "What are you looking at?" I said. "Tomorrow, day after. We can't stay here long. It's Marlowe's sister's well, not ours, and there's already 8 of us on it." She tapped the soft west line. "There's a road here I think goes clear, but I don't know the crossings, and I don't know who owns the ground, and I don't know what the rain did to it 2 nights ago." She looked up at me, and it was the old fear, and it wasn't the old fear because she wasn't looking at me to be reassured. She was looking at me because I was a man who could answer one of the 3 things she'd just listed. A year ago, I'd have said, "We'll figure it out." 6 months ago even, at that kitchen table with the taxes, I'd have said the county's got plans, don't borrow trouble, and gone back to bed, and left her to draw the line alone in the dark like she'd done for 8 years. I pulled the other chair around and sat down next to her where I could see the map right side up. And I looked at the soft west line, and I said, "What are we missing?" She looked at me a second. Then she looked back at the map, and something in her shoulders came down. "I don't know yet," she said. And the thing is, that used to be the sentence that scared me. "I don't know yet" out of Marianne used to send me straight for the reassuring lie, because if she didn't know, then nobody knew. And I couldn't stand to sit in a house where nobody knew. But she said it sitting next to me with a pencil in her hand and a fourth line already on the map that neither of us could have made alone. And it didn't scare either of us the way it used to. "I don't know yet" wasn't the end of the plan. It was the beginning of the next one. And this time, there were 4 of us to make it. And I was going to be one of them, instead of the man in the doorway telling her to come back to bed. Outside, in the gray, somebody knocked on the barn door and called that one of the trucks was parked in soft ground and wanted moving before it sank, and that Marlowe wanted a second pair of eyes on the west approach off the property while the light was good. I looked at the map a moment longer. The 2 crossed out lines, the third one ending in RV no, the fourth one running off into the white, and Marianne's soft, uncertain pencil reaching past it toward morning. Then I closed the atlas partway. I didn't put it away. I left it open enough that the fourth line still showed, that the pencil could come back to it, that anybody at that table could pick it up and add what they knew. Then I got up to go move the truck and look at the west approach with Marlowe, because that part was mine, and because there was a road out there somewhere that nobody had told the map about yet, and we were going to have to go find out whether the ground would hold.